Spoiler alert.
Welcome back to a very disappointing episode of Ty and That Guy, because we do not have that guy. Instead, we have this guy rocking the most amazing stash that the show has ever had, like making Wes feel bad about his pathetic stash whenever he wears one.
I don't know. I mean, he has pretty impressive facial hair when he has it,
Well, reintroduce
great.
yourself to the audience so they know why they should care what you think about things.
Hey, everybody. My name is Brett Simmons, and I'm glad to be here.
What do you do, Brett?
Yeah, I just watch movies and talk about them. That's all I do, I mean, I think I fancy myself a writer-director and try and make movies once in a while and watch movies the rest of the time.
As someone who has seen some of his movies, I can validate that. That is actually true. You have made movies, and especially because today we're going to be talking about Godzilla Minus One. The fact that you have worked in the horror genre, I think, fits into this.
Yep.
Because to start out, we've both seen Godzilla Minus One. I assume we both enjoyed it.
Yes, I loved it.
Yeah, I also loved it. And one of the things I liked about it is that it edged back toward horror.
Yes.
That
100% yes.
Yeah, instead of the kaiju basically being superheroes, which is what some of the later Godzilla sort of turned into. Mm-hmm. No, they're just monsters. They're just big monsters, and they're very scary. And being a human-sized person, just a human-sized thing in the same world with something the size of a kaiju is inherently terrifying and life-threatening.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that hasn't been done in a long time. Like, I feel like Godzilla 2014, the one that Gareth Edwards did, which I thought was great, like that one really overwhelmed me with just being so ground level and giving so much perspective to how big Godzilla could be and what that would feel like, And that itself felt scary, but Godzilla himself didn't feel threatening. And that's one of the things about Godzilla Minus One that really, I just fell in love with it right away, was that Godzilla was just straight up a scary monster. And he was huge. Like, it had all that from 2014 as far as the scope and the size and being on the ground, but also he looked scary. He, all this thing is doing is walking through this city.
Yeah, he didn't mean to do that. He's just walking around.
This is just his size doing that. And I was like, golly, like, this is really putting into perspective how devastating just a walk would be.
Which is always true of Godzilla, but so many of the later movies shied away from showing the damage, shied away from showing the fatalities.
It's just those details, right? Yeah. Like just the details of what was happening. Yeah.
So just by moving around in the city, Godzilla's killing a lot of people, and so the goal in this movie, and we see the terror on a character, the Noriko character we love now. We see her terror. We see her fight to survive in the middle of all of this chaos of this thing moving around. So we're there with her. We're emotionally engaged. The goal of the movie now isn't, in the Toho movies, it was like, we must befriend Godzilla. Let's get the twins that can sing to him.
Right.
Then he'll be on our side, right? It's not that. It is, we got to fucking kill this thing because it just shows up and wrecks our stuff, and that's not okay.
Yeah. If we don't do something to him, we're all going to be gone. Like, he's going to keep doing stuff. Yeah. Like, we're all dead if we don't do something.
And the awesome thing they did, and I was going to talk about this later, but I want to talk about it now because it affects the thing I'm about to talk about. This is old Godzilla, the original Godzilla, the gritty, pre-Toho era Godzilla, in a movie made by Japanese filmmakers.
Yes.
Exploring the Japanese idea of Godzilla and the Japanese reaction to Godzilla in a way that Western filmmakers just don't.
Just can't. Exactly right. Yep. And that's was so refreshing.
It was. And part of that is the thing I'm about to talk about, which is when they're like, we have to kill this thing. It's giant and it's going to wreck all of our shit. We don't have an army anymore. We don't have a navy anymore. We were disarmed after World War II. So all the shit we used to have that we would use to fight something like this has been taken.
It's all gone.
It's been, the ships have been scuttled and scrapped. The army, we're allowed to have a minimal army for just internal security purposes. We're not allowed to have an expeditionary army anymore. That was all stuff that was signed into law after the surrender in World War II. So that's the situation the Japanese are in the 50s is a disarmed society.
Yeah.
And so they're going, we had these big cruisers that had huge guns on them, and those would have totally worked, but they've all been scuttled.
But they're gone.
They're gone. And so how do we fight this thing with the stuff we have left?
Right.
And it feels very much a story of how do we rebuild in the face of the catastrophe?
Yes. And because that scene when they're all trying to plan, it's like it's kind of like the this movie version of the board meeting in Amity and Jaws, where everyone's coming together like, just what are we going to do about this shark? But obviously he's kind of weepy when he's kind of talking about when they're all trying to figure out what they're going to do, and then they all start coming together. That's all they can do is come together as a people. Like all we have really is each other. Yes. That is what we have. Our only weapon is each other and our ideas. We don't have any external support. Yep. We don't have any weapons. All we have is us. So what do we do?
Ingenuity and a desire to survive.
Yes. The will to live.
This will to live in the face of the scars World War II has left on the country.
Right.
So
it's unbelievable.
You talk about the general who gets weepy. This is a man who failed his country.
Mm-hmm.
This is a man who watched his country be humiliated and humbled and bombed almost out of existence by this implacable enemy. And as we see with Koichi, there's so much survivor's guilt. Yeah. Like, I should have died in this fight and I didn't, and I'm still here. Which leads up to the amazing speech. The guy who stands up and goes, maybe we don't die for our country. Maybe we live.
Yeah, I wrote down that quote. It was Kenji. He says, because I had to write it down because I loved it so much. He says, the next battle is not one waged to the death, but a battle to live for the future.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just could, it was so profound.
And it feels so connected to, like, it exposed to me an element of Japanese culture in post-World War II that I probably intellectually knew about, but had an emotional connection to.
Yes.
That you take an entire culture that have been told that their job is to die defending their homeland, and then that's taken away from them, and now they're alive. And what did they do? And this guy just standing up and going, well, maybe we don't die for the homeland. Maybe we live for the homeland. Maybe we fix what's broken. Maybe we take care of each other.
Yes.
And
it's so good. But it's also good. Like, that's the theme of the whole movie. Because even in the end, the guy who couldn't sacrifice his life as a kamikaze pilot is now willing to sacrifice his life again as a kamikaze pilot, but he's not even really sacrificing his life because he now has the engineering built into the jet to be able to eject himself.
Well, but let's talk about that. So we've talked a little bit about the movie. So it starts out with this sort of really immediately post-war, we're living in the rubble of the war. Then we move on to sort of that 50s rebuilding era where people wear business suits and they go on trains and they have jobs, right? And it feels like the beginning of the Japan that we know. And then we get to if we can't stop this thing, it will destroy everything we've built, all the hard work that we've put into rebuilding our country. We have to do something. And these people coming together, all these people with survivor guilt, facing off with this implacable threat. And the guy saying, hey, let's try to live this time. Let's try to beat the thing and live. And the guy who was too cowardly to be a kamikaze at the beginning now says, there's a way to win. There's this one plane left. We can put a bomb in it. I will fly it into the monster. I will blow the monster up. And we don't know what the engineer is going to do. Because we have this engineer character, which you brought up, who through the whole movie, he knows Koichi's shame. He knows his shame.
Yep.
And he's very antagonistic to Koichi through the film. But by the time you get to the end, you see Koichi's bravery. And the fact that now Koichi has something immediate to fight for. He's got this kid. He's got this woman that he lives with, who, by the way, we see a scene where we think she's been killed. So he's got all the rage and sorrow that comes from that.
Yes, that scene got me.
Oh, it was brutal. Joe and I talked about it before we were doing this, and we're both on the camp of like, don't push him, tackle him.
Yes, 100%. 100%. I thought the same thing.
The shockwave is coming, and Koichi's going to be killed by it. She appears to be hit. and
And
we
it was
think she's been
crazy
killed.
because it's not only are you so invested in these relationships, but in the moment I was thinking, this is a dude who couldn't sacrifice himself for the greater good. And the closest relationship he has at this point in his life just sacrificed herself. So we
Sacrifices herself
think
for him.
for him.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, this has to be like the turning point for his change to become real because
And it
powerful.
is. And in many ways it is. Because now he's like, okay, this thing killed my girl. He gotta go.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yep.
if I have to fly a bomb down his throat,
I'll
I'm
do it.
down.
Yep.
So then you get the sort of the implementation of the plan, and you get the guys doing stuff with the boats, and you get the engineer fixing the plane, making it flyable. This engineer
Right.
who's had such an antagonistic relationship with Koichi through the film, fixing the plane, making it flyable. And we don't know all of what he's done, but they do talk about they take the gas tank out so they can put a bigger bomb in. And
Right.
so we know everything that has been done to this plane is turning it into a kamikaze plane. It doesn't have enough gas to fly around a lot.
Right. It's built for a one-way trip.
It's built for a one-way trip. Absolutely. So then it builds up to this final moment where Koichi does go off and it does devastate Godzilla in a way that appears fake.
Yes. And even without anything that unfolds from this point after this, that already is such a satisfying and moving conclusion, right?
Right.
Like him just finally doing the thing and flying into Godzilla's mouth and it working when nothing else has worked. I'm like, well, roll the credits, man. This was fantastic, but the movie isn't done yet.
Well, because now the reveal.
Yeah.
So Koichi is absolutely willing to kamikaze Godzilla.
Yeah.
He is ready for it. He's down. He's like, this guy killed my girl. He's got to go. I'm driving this bomb right down his throat. I don't care if I'm there with it.
Yep.
And the engineer knows that. But in spite of that, the engineer goes ahead and fixes the ejection so that Koichi doesn't have to die.
He doesn't have
to accomplish the mission.
Yep.
And the reveal doesn't feel cheesy. It doesn't feel like Deus Ex, like, oh, Koichi, suddenly magically he didn't die because this thing. When the reveal happens, we absolutely understand everything. We like, oh,
yes,
because we have seen the engineer softening to Koichi.
Yes.
We have seen him admiring Koichi's bravery now and his willingness to commit this sacrifice. We've seen
he sees his change. Yeah,
we see his change. Yeah. So when it happens, we're like, oh, of course the engineer did that.
Yeah,
of course he did.
It was completely earned, and I love that the story waited to reveal that because it allowed us to, like I was saying, feel the impact of Koichi's change realized, right? But I actually wrote this down too because it's like really Koichi's story is a guy who wasn't willing to sacrifice himself, who changes and ultimately becomes the guy who's now no longer a coward. I'm now going to be brave enough to do the thing that I couldn't at the beginning of the movie. But then you have the mechanic at the beginning who's like, you should have sacrificed yourself, who now at the end is going, don't do it.
Yeah.
You don't need to do it. Live.
You don't need to do it.
You don't need to do it. And I was like, this is so layered and cool. And like you said, like he ejects and it doesn't feel like a Deus Machina because it's so earned. And the way they reveal it, you're so moved and you're like, this is touching back to the beginning of the movie and fulfilling the change of all of these characters and the change of this place and this culture for this moment. It's so good.
And perfectly encapsulated in the speech that you read out earlier, which is, we're not here to die for our country anymore. We're going to do more than that now.
We're here to live. We're going to live for the future, and we're going to rebuild, and we're going to... and we have to live so we can keep going.
It's such an amazing message, and I never engaged with that change emotionally engaged with that change of sort of Japanese culture following post World War II in this way. And I think that's because this is Japanese filmmakers. They're struggling with these big ideas, with these big changes to their culture and to their country that came after World War II. And they're putting it on film in a way that really reveals it. And I'm so happy that they were able to do that America hasn't so completely taken Godzilla over and made it their thing.
Yes.
That this film couldn't be made.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Even after it was done, because me and my son watched Oppenheimer too, and it's just such a funny coincidence that these movies came out like the same year. But I was reading Christopher Nolan, like loved Minus One, and I was like, That's awesome. But I was thinking how, you know, my definition of Godzilla prior, and even though I watched the original, it was old, black and white, and I was young. A lot of it goes over my head, like thematically, right?
Yeah.
And historically. And so at the time, I was missing the stuff that was richer about that movie until later in life. And then watching the American movies, I just realized, man, of course, we keep defining Godzilla as, yeah, this gigantic nuclear monster that also sort of protects us. Like a necessary destruction, a necessary monster. And I was like, of course we do that. And that's so horrible. Because to make him just the monster and the devastation, and to see the human side of it, of we need to stop. Not only do we need to beat this thing, we need to live so that we can thrive and move on. And just the response to death and devastation, you can always choose to let that define your future moving forward forever, or you can take it like, we are going to thrive from here. We are going to rebuild from here. And we are, as a survivors, that is our obligation, is not to mourn what's been lost, but to live to build a new future. It was,
well, we honor what's lost.
Yeah,
by
exactly.
building the future. Yeah.
By living. And it's so good. And it just made me realize how much, like, I love of course, don't get me wrong, like you said already, like, I love watching Godzilla fight other monsters.
Yeah.
But it all starts to distract from the origin of Godzilla alone showing up in a place is a devastating and terrifying thing. And not being like an anti-hero, not being like the monster that destroys stuff, but at least he's protecting us from the other thing that destroys stuff. No, Godzilla's he is the thing Batman that destroys stuff. Yeah. By the way, when he did, I just love this from an aesthetic standpoint when, because, it's like, okay, like Godzilla comes out of the ocean in the beginning. Oh, this is horrible. And then Godzilla shows up in the ocean later when they're sweeping the mines, and he's way bigger. This is even worse.
Right.
He regenerates when they blow him up. Oh, this is even worse. And then he shows up on land. Okay, him on land this size is much worse than him in the ocean this size.
Yes.
And then stacking on top of that the atomic breath.
Right.
The way that his what do you call it? Like his spires on his back?
Yeah, his little spines on his back.
Yeah, nowhere. There's nothing.
It's like the guy slowly racking the shotgun that he's pointing at you. It's like, there's nothing I could do about that. This is going to be really bad.
Nope. Exactly, like the suspense of that, but also just like, it was so cool, but also so terrifying.
Yeah. I think that is the tightrope this movie walks so well. It's cool, but terrifying.
Yes.
Like it's still Godzilla. It's still a big monster stepping on stuff, but and that's always cool to look at. It's always cool, but underneath that are these much richer themes, much richer ideas.
Yes.
One of the other thing that I liked about sort of the overall theme of this is these guys don't go to kill Godzilla because he exists. They go to kill Godzilla because they're trying to rebuild and he's stopping that.
Yeah.
I get the sense when these guys have their little meeting and they're like, we got to stop this thing. And the sense if Godzilla just stayed in the ocean and ate fish, they wouldn't fuck with him.
Yeah. They'd be like,
go with
there's a giant dinosaur in our ocean.
Yeah. Go eat fish. It's fine. We don't care. It's only because he is stopping this important rebuilding they're doing. That's the only reason they want to take him out.
The threat that he is just so great.
It's very, it's subtle, but it is a different spin than the American version.
Yes.
You get the sense that the American version, big monster exists, therefore it must die.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Whereas this is big monster exists, and he broke our stuff, and we need to build stuff, and he's killing our guys, and we need to keep those people alive. So that's why we're going to take him out.
Yeah.
Instead of it's not the big game hunter version of Godzilla.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we've said it, but it's the first time that I was actually kind of scared of Godzilla.
Yeah.
Like I've always recognized intellectually that he was a threat, but this was the first Godzilla movie where I actually felt he was really scaring me. Like I was scared of Godzilla when he showed up. I was freaked out. Which
and I
was
think part of that is what I talked about earlier, that they didn't make it bloodless.
Yes.
Because in in many Godzilla movies, Godzilla is still big and he's scary and he knocks buildings over, but we never see the consequence of that.
Yeah.
This movie does not shy away from the consequence.
Yes.
When a building falls over, the people in that building are dead now, and that's a terrible thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the movie was never trying to make me sympathize with Godzilla, which is something I'm really used to. And to make the movie centered on the human emotion of it so deeply makes Godzilla even more threatening, because you realize the part of the story that I'm really invested and care about is in danger by this force coming in.
Which leads to the, so they do, the bomb works, they fly it down Godzilla's throat, they blow it up, Godzilla appears to be dead. And so we've stopped the threat. The only false note in the movie is still one that I'm totally fine with, which is where they find Noriko alive in the hospital.
Right. Yes. Oh man, let's talk about it.
That's not set up. It feels like completely out of left field when they find her and she's alive. I don't care. I want her to be alive.
Yeah. Like, I'm happy about this, but that was, when we were watching it, that was our first reaction was, wait a second. How? And she also didn't look like she was too banged up, considering it looked like an entire building washed her away.
I think she's kind of wrecked, right? But no,
she got washed away by like an onslaught of brick and stone and metal.
Right.
But do you know, with all that said, I agree with you. Like, it was so satisfying as far as emotionally that I'm like, I can let it go. I want her to be alive. But what do you look it up? Because I was like, is this teasing something, or what is the deal with this? Because remember how they reunite and they embrace, and then the camera kind of lingers on her neck, and you see this kind of black mark on her skin kind of spreading up her neck towards her ear, and then it ends.
I don't know what that is.
I was like, I guess, and I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that there will be comments correcting it or explaining it, because I didn't get to dive deep enough. But my understanding is, I guess, in the lore of Godzilla and like the Japanese lore of Godzilla and how they define Godzilla, there is an aspect of his scales when they come off, or getting contact exposure to Godzilla gives you the regeneration.
What? Really?
Yeah, but not in a yay, I'm alive way. In a I'm going to turn into a mutant. And I guess one of the movies, I don't know which one, I can't remember which one, they said someone actually like turns into like a kaiju, like someone actually like body horror, like regenerates them, but then they continue mutating the way that Godzilla continues mutating. Is it
possible this is a Godzilla movie I haven't seen? I thought I'd seen them all.
I'll find out what the name of it is. I was going on Godzilla Reddit. I was just like, someone's got to explain this to me, because why would they show this?
Noriko's going to turn into a kaiju?
The question is, I think that was the tease, was just like, not necessarily that, more than what is going to happen to her, and that it is related to Godzilla in some way, or the exposure of Godzilla in some way, but it might not be good.
And again, I do call it a false note, because if I was writing a screenplay, I would not do that. I would not have the character just, I'm magically alive. The worst example of this, the one that drives me nuts, Steven Spielberg made a pretty good World of Worlds movie that he ruins in the last act.
Yes.
And part of what ruins it in the last act is, hi, I'm the son that ran away into the battle, and I'm magically alive, and I beat you here to the parents' house.
Yes.
Which is so false. It's such a false note.
Yes,
and
I agree.
It invalidates so much of the emotion that you had before this.
Yes.
That it just drives me crazy every time I see it.
It feels so convenient, and it's just like, the convenience is just the enemy of these movies, right? It's like, I just watched a character like struggle.
It feels contrived.
Yes.
Right? Which is, for me, the next level up is contrivance, where it's just like, come on, really?
That's a really funny comparison. It's so true.
And for some reason, when this one happened, which is, you could call it kind of the same thing, for some reason it didn't have that effect on me, because I was just so happy she was alive.
Yeah, same, because you're just, and that's just the testament to the movie, is just the amount of time it spent, but also the quality of the story. Like, you're so invested in the human story of this movie. Like I said before, like, from right out the gate, a kamikaze pilot who doesn't want a kamikaze, and now has survivor's guilt. Like, from the get-go, I'm like, wow, I'm invested in the human story of this. And by the way, Godzilla's also in this. The movie without Godzilla was already really pulling me in, which is all why when she shows up in the end, you're just relieved. I guess they could have. I feel like if I was writing it, that would have been one of the things that maybe would have saved for a sequel, like a sequel reveal, like she's here, and that being like one of the core mysteries is like, well, I'm happy that she's here, but how is she here?
Right.
You know, assuming that that's going to be a thing at all, you know, but that'd be pretty fascinating.
If the same filmmakers make another one, I'm going to watch it.
Oh, 100%.
I think these guys did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
So I'm all on board. I have enormous confidence in the filmmakers who made this movie. If they make more movies, I'm going to go see those movies.
Yes, 100%.
And for me, that's the highest compliment you can pay a filmmaker. Is like, if their name is on the thing, you go see it.
Yeah. Just the blind loyalty. It's like your brand is a brand that I trust. So
yeah, I'm in for whatever you're looking to do. Yeah, let's
where
go
would
see
you
this
rank?
thing.
Where would you rank Godzilla Minus One among Godzilla movies as far as like your ranking?
It's my favorite Godzilla movie ever.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. I just wanted to ask you first. It's my.
Are you going to do the top 5?
Oh, are we doing the top 5?
That is the top 5. Is the Godzilla rankings?
5. Is it?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
it is. So
Okay.
let me pull that
Let's
up
do the
so
top 5.
you guys
We're
can
already
debate.
here, since Brett gave us a perfect segue into it.
Very good. He was reading my mind. He has the ESP.
You're welcome.
It's a short read.
This is the patron pool that they came up with of what they thought were the top choices. So -1, number 1, correct?
Oh, for sure.
Without question. For me.
Yeah.
For me.
Like 1,000% yes.
I would agree.
Now, you know what I haven't seen yet, Ty, that I'm dying to see and my son's begging me to watch, because this movie got me going, was Shin Godzilla.
Yeah. Shin Godzilla is pretty good.
It's basically like another reboot, but a modern reboot, sure. Right?
Yeah, it is a modern reboot. Yep.
See, and that's cool, but that's what I keep reading that I feel myself feeling too, is that there's just something extra special about Godzilla Minus One being a 1945 movie.
Yeah, and I would put Gojira up there because it is really the movie that started everything. And
that's awesome. I do like 2014 quite a bit.
There are moments in 2014 that are some of the best Godzilla moments ever.
Oh yeah,
and one of those moments is when they parachute out and they're dropping on the parachutes, and then the parachute guys are going past Godzilla.
Yes,
because he's so fucking big, they're parachuting past him.
Yes,
that is maybe one of the greatest Godzilla shots ever.
Oh, it's unreal. One of the teaser trailers was just that shot.
Yes, because it's an amazing shot, and you're like,
it's
Jesus
so
Christ.
good. But that's the brilliance of that movie, was the dedication to executing it from camera perspectives that were human motivated in order to keep Godzilla feeling massive. Like there's shots just from the office building windows that just contextually putting him in a POV that you have recognized having in your life, but putting Godzilla in it. It's the biggest Godzilla has ever felt to me watching that movie. And that was my big takeaway.
I agree. And big and powerful and implacable and unstoppable and all of the things Godzilla should be to be terrifying.
Yes. 100% agree.
I don't love the sort of a lot of the human stuff in 2014 falls flat for me.
Yeah, I agree.
But the Godzilla stuff is top notch. And that shot of them falling past Godzilla as they're parachuting in is, I think, the greatest Godzilla shot ever put on film.
It's incredible. It's so good. Once Bryan Cranston was not in the movie, I was having a hard time sticking with it.
Unfortunately, that is a thing that I'm less interested in his son and his wife and their domestic problems. I'm less interested in that.
Agreed. Totally agreed.
And I, as a kid, and feel free to disagree. As a kid, my absolute favorite Toho Godzilla movie, Mechagodzilla.
Oh, Mechagodzilla. I was going to say Mechagodzilla.
Yeah.
Same. Oh, man. When I was young, that was just, well, for one, it made a rad action figure.
Oh, my God. It was the best, right?
It was a rad action figure.
If you were the kid on your block that had the Mechagodzilla action figure, you were the king of that block.
Yep.
Well, let's see how close the patrons were.
Let's see what they say.
Well,
okay,
obviously Godzilla Minus One, Gojira, Godzilla 2014.
It was
Oh, so
Godzilla
they went
versus
Godzilla
Kong.
versus Kong. See, I think Godzilla versus Kong is not as good as Mechagodzilla.
It was entertaining.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was like one
Popcorn.
of those where like it was done and I was like, well, I saw it.
Big, dumb,
And that
and
was
fun.
fun.
It was big, dumb, and fun.
But-
like I enjoyed it in the hour and a half or 2 hours I was watching it, and then I immediately forgot everything about it.
Completely. I was just about to say, like, I haven't seen it since and I don't remember anything about it except the fight in the end was, I remember thinking that it was cool.
Yeah.
But did you watch the series Monarch?
But yeah, my wife and I watched it, and it's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it's enjoyable popcorn TV.
It had some good stuff. It was a mixed bag. I mean, the fact that it had Kurt, that's why I
Russell,
was there in the
mean,
first place. I would like to say it was because of Godzilla, but I knew Godzilla was barely going to be in it, so I was there for Kurt.
Yeah. All right. You got any final thoughts before we punch out? We've done our top 5.
No, I just really hope that they make another. I don't know what they're going to call a sequel to Godzilla Minus One. I don't know if logic says it means it's Godzilla 0 because we're counting
Godzilla
upwards from the
minus
negatives, but I hope
0.5.
they make a sequel.
Yeah. If these guys make more movies, I'm going to watch them because they've really
1000%.
earned my respect and my trust as filmmakers. Excited to see what else they do.
Yep. Otherwise, I'm really stoked to have gotten to come hang out and talk about this movie. Like I've just been dying to talk about it, period. But it's good to be back on the podcast with you.
Well, and it's good to have a man on the podcast with a mustache I can respect.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I just feel like there needs to be more mustache representation on the podcast, and I'm trying to bring it.
And there's a lot of guys with the wispy bullshit mustache.
Yeah,
that ain't gonna fly.
Trying too hard. It's just they
Trying
watch
too
Tombstone
hard.
too many times.
That is not gonna fly. If you can't one-on-one with Tom Selleck, then just get the fuck out.
Oh man, that's high praise. You know, I think I'm ready to go through the rest of my day now. Maybe the rest of my week.
Go get in your Ferrari. Go pick up the girl in the bikini.
My chopper, okay? And get my chopper, cruise low over the ocean.
Nice. All right, man. Thanks for coming and filling in for Wes, who obviously doesn't take any of this seriously and is totally unprofessional.
Yeah, honestly, glad I could be
but
here.
you're welcome
Thanks for having
anytime. Maybe we'll just get rid of Wes and you and I can just talk about movies.
Oh, I missed that guy. Just let Wes come, but I'll come anytime.
Right,
Appreciate
thanks,
getting
man.
to come on with you.
Appreciate it. Joseph, let's go ahead and
Hey, say goodbye, Ty.
fuck off, Joseph.